if you know, my background is that I was a counselor, and I didn't become a counselor until I was sitting back there trying to figure out. I was about 34 years old, so at that point I'd already been married 30 years since we got married. No, at that, Lisa and I were married, we were 20, so I'd already been married for 14, 15 years. And I became a counselor, and the main thing that I did is marriage and family counseling. And the funny thing is, when I first started counseling, I had dual reasons for being a counselor, right? One is I really wanted to help people, and I felt like God was calling me to do that. Number two is I wanted to make a lot of money. I mean, just to be quite honest with you, that was so I kind of at first had a fear that if I just advertised myself as a Christian counselor, I wouldn't make very much money. So I was kind of a counselor, and then if somebody wanted me to be a Christian counselor. But I found out in a hurry. I was trying to get some referrals from the whatever county Waxahachie's in, from their county when they let people out of jail. So I'm talking to him, and the guy goes, we really don't need another counselor around here. And I said, oh, by the way, I felt like God was saying, dude, tell the guy you're a Christian counselor. I said, by the way, I'm a Christian counselor. The guy goes, oh, we don't have one of those around here. But the amazing thing is when I got in my mind that I was a Christian counselor and really started teaching people biblical values and principles to live their lives by, it's amazing the marriages that got saved. It's amazing the families that got better. It's just amazing. So what we're going to be doing the next few weeks is I'm teaching a series that I'm calling Values That Fix Families. And we're going to be talking about priority today, courage next week, forgiveness, and then love. And I promise you, you're going to learn some things biblically that will make every relationship better, but especially we'll be gearing it towards your family. It doesn't matter if you're a single parent. It doesn't matter if you're a blended family. It doesn't matter if you're an extended family. Whatever, I promise you, this will help every single situation. But here's what I want to start off with, since we're talking about priorities today. I put a few priorities on your notes. You see those? You see what they are? I added you later. First I put job, spouse, God, and kids, and I added you later. But which is you? Like, if it's me, it's me. Are you getting that part? You. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to just take a second, because I don't want to spend a lot of time doing this, but rank your priorities there. Now, don't rank them the way you believe the Bible says you're supposed to. Rank them the way you are. Okay? What's first? God first? Is spouse first, second? Is job? Is what are you first? I mean, be honest. Look at your life. Look at your life. See, where do you spend your money? Where do you spend your time? What do you think about the most? There's lots of other priorities in life, but these are important. And then here's the hardest part. Later on, ask your spouse or your kids what they think your priorities are. You know? I've known a lot of people that have been in church all their lives. They serve everywhere like crazy. They say God is first. And if you were to ask their kids if they think that God is first in their dad's life, they'd say, no. His job is. His entertainment is. His car is. It's amazing the things that people put first. As long as I can remember as a Christian, I've been told that you can tell what a person's priority is by where they spend their time, what they get most excited about. But I want to give you some things. I want to give you an order that I believe the Bible teaches as far as just these priorities. There's a lot of other things and a lot of other goals you have in your life, but I want to give you these first. What do you think number one is? God. That is the church answer. That is correct. Now, we know that God isn't always first, and although we'll say that He is oftentimes, God should be number one. And we've heard over and over and over again that you're to love the Lord with all your heart, soul, mind, spirit, love, and love your neighbors yourself, that's what's most important. But I can't tell you how and I learned this the hard way. And I talk to people all the time that learn this the hard way. You got to put God first. Now the weird thing is we think that putting God first is just a natural, easy thing. We go, oh yeah, I put God first, and then my family, and then people just say that all the time. But look at First of all, the goal for a Christian, the goal in loving God is spiritual maturity. The goal in focusing God is spiritual maturity. And what is spiritual maturity? It's in parentheses. To be more like Christ. That's spiritual maturity. Now, look at Exodus 23. This is a New Living Translation. This is the first commandment. What's it say? Say it with me. You must not have any other God but me. You must not have any other God but me. I know we look at that sometimes and we think that maybe, is there anything gray about that sentence? I mean, dude, that is about as black and white as you can get, right? You must not have any other God but me. Now here's the interesting thing. People read this like God's saying there's a hierarchy and you're supposed to put me first. That's not what this is saying. There's no other gods but me. There's not a hierarchy. It's not God first. God is in everything. And your love for God and your commitment to God should affect and be a part of every single. There's no other God in me. There's no small gods. There's no little gods. There's no part-time gods. There's not anything else that should get your attention stronger that you should put anywhere close to the sacrifice in. Every single thing should be about God. And if you get distracted by anything else, then that's called what? Idolatry, right? That's called idolatry. Now, if you've been churched any time at all, you think, well, it would be common sense that we keep God forward, but in front. But I think what we get confused about is we get confused about idolatry, and it goes back to the Bible. I mean, we think idolatry is a golden calf, right? Isn't that what you think about? Oh, I haven't worshipped any. I haven't worshipped any. I remember when I first became a Christian, I started looking around the house for little things I had that were, I wonder if I worship that, because I was thinking in my mind, idolatry, idols, it's something that you build, it's something you make. Look, idolatry is any single thing you put in front of God. Anything that you decide, that you make a decision on that goes against what God says, you're committing idolatry. It's interesting because in Exodus 19 we see that the disciples, the Hebrew people have been brought out of Egypt, and God has just done all these miraculous things, right? I mean, you remember Charlton Heston and Moses and the water that turned to red and the locusts and the killing of the firstborn child and then they're going through the wilderness, and guess what? They've got fire showing them the way at night, and they've got a cloud showing them the way in the day, and they've got protection from God in the form of a cloud and lightning and fire and everything behind them, and all of this kind of stuff is happening, and they get out there, and up to this point, God has never really given His people rules to live by. So He takes Moses up on the mountain. Now this is a pretty incredible thing because they look at this mountain, and dude, this mountain is like shaking all the time, and there's fire going on up there, and everybody knows that God's up there. One of the way they know is they've been told they're not even supposed to touch this mountain. And I'm talking about people walk up to the side of the mountain, go bzzz, and fall over, you know what I'm saying? So they know God is up on this mountain. So God says, Moses, I want you to come up and I'm going to give you the rules. So Moses goes up and he gets the rules and he's spending this time with God, and he comes back down, and y'all remember that history of the world? Moses comes down and he's got 15 commandments. 10 commandments, you know what I'm saying? So, I don't know why that just came into my mind all of a sudden. Squirrel, But while they're there and they've seen all this stuff, don't you ever look at the Hebrew people and go, dude, y'all are so stupid. I mean, how can you not see all the things that God does and has done? But Moses goes up, and he's up there for a while. God has given him y'all know He's not giving him like 10 commandments. He's saying, here's how to breathe on Monday, here's how to breathe on Tuesday. I mean, He's given him all these. Go back and look. I went back and looked at Exodus today, and I'm thinking, how can you keep up with all those things, But while he's up there, they start getting nervous. Now, remember, the mountain's still going, and the people are going, Aaron, where is Moses? Aaron is Moses' brother, by the way, and he's in charge while Moses is gone. Aaron, where is Moses? We don't have anybody to lead us. I mean, let's make a golden calf. Is that the dumbest thing you ever heard in your life? Let's make something to worship. So they got all their jewelry and all these things that they thought were really important in gold, and they made this huge calf. And do you ever just look at that and go, oh, how is that possible? And I want to tell you something. God got so mad, Moses had to pray his people out of getting fried. Because they put something in front of God. Something in front of God. And I want to tell you something. If you want to know the priorities in your life, then what you have to do is you have to start off with God is your God and nothing else. Not that God's just number one on the hierarchy. God is God, and He's God of everything, and everything you think and everything you do and everything you're about, and we get so confused because of the golden calf about idolatry. But look, Os Guinness wrote this: idolatry is a huge problem in the Bible, dominant in our personal lives, and listen to this, and irrelevant in our mistaken estimations. And that's the devil's plan. The devil don't want you to think your job is an idol. The devil wants you to think that, God gave you that job so you can make lots of money and take care of your kids and retire in Hawaii. And so it's real easy to not think of that as your idol. The things that you want and you think about all the time, that whether it's your retirement or a nice car, a bigger house or a better job or whatever thing that you're thinking of, the devil doesn't want you to believe and understand that you've turned that into an idol, that all the sacrifices you're making. He's wanting you to think, look, if you do this, and what's happening is you get these things and you're being blessed by God, and this is what God wants, and the devil doesn't want you to believe that that's an idol. That's the way it works. Idolatry, idol worship is any single thing that we put in front of our relationship with God. And the problem is all sin falls under the heading of idol worship. All sin. Anything that you're willing to sacrifice your relationship with God to do would be idol. Deuteronomy 4:29 says, search for the Lord your God with all your heart and you will find Him. All your heart. That means in everything you do, in your parenting, in your relationship with your wife, and in your job, and every single thing you do, you need to constantly seek for the Lord, because it's with all of your heart, and it's promised that you're going to find Him. Deuteronomy 6:4-5 says, listen, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone, and you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and with all your strength. Do y'all remember hearing that? Do we ever talk about that here? It's everything. It's everything. If you're going to be on the goal of being mature in your faith, then your focus has to be on God at all times. Jesus tells a story in Luke, and he uses the farmer and the seeds as a metaphor for throwing the Word of God out there and for people that are growing. And in Luke chapter 4, verse 18, he says this. He says, sometimes when the farmer throws his seeds out there, they fell among the thorns. There's one that says it fell on the hard ground and it didn't go in, and then there's this one says it fell on the thorns, then there's the other that says it fell on soft ground and it went in and it grew and matured. But this is the one, he says, it fell among the thorns, those who hear the message, but all too quickly the message is what? What's that say? Crowded out. It's crowded out. What crowds it out? By the cares and riches and pleasures of this life. Let me tell you something. Cares and riches and pleasures are not sin in themselves. They're not immoral. Those are amoral. They become immoral when those things are more important than God. What he's saying here is the Word of God, the Spirit of God, the thing that helps you grow in maturity, if there's so many other things going on that are of the world, you're choking it out. And you're not going to mature. You will always be a baby Christian. It doesn't mean you're not saved. It doesn't mean you're not going to go to heaven. It means you're going to be a miserable Christian. Because you're always going to feel anxious. You're always going to feel depressed. You're always going to feel like God's not giving you your thing. You're not ever going to have the contentment that Paul talks about, the deep joy that the Bible teaches, the deep love for other people, the ability to forgive, the peace that passes all understanding. All of those things you're not going to have if all of the things in the world are crowding out and choking out your relationship with God. And so they will never grow into maturity. Look, idolatry is not irrelevant in our life in 2013. There's more things now to worship than there ever was back when the Ten Commandments were written. We're not worshiping golden calves. We're worshiping money, entertainment, popularity, retirement, our looks, keeping up with the Jones. We need a better house. We need a better job. We need acceptance. We need to do all that we can to win. We have golden calves. The problem is the devil doesn't want us to believe that that's what they are. He does a great job disguising them. We think they're just slight distractions. But they become idols. And when you really sit down and honestly look, that's why I'm saying, look, take those priorities and someone who's close to you say, let me ask you something. I'm not going to tell you what my answers are. Would you look at these priorities and you just tell me what you think by looking at my life are my top priorities? Now give them permission to be honest, especially your spouse, and not be mad at them. Because they're going to tell you what they see if they're honest. And for most of us, it'll be a major eye-opening problem. Here's a few questions just to help you discover your golden calves. What disappoints you? What disappoints you? There's a possibility that there's something that's more important than it should be, so you find great disappointment whenever whatever that is happens. What do you complain about the most? Where do you make the most financial sacrifices? I've told you all this before. And there are people that honestly will come to me and they'll say, Royal, this has happened in our life financially, or this has happened in your life financially. You know where we're cutting back? We're cutting back God. What that means is everything else that you've left up there in front of God, that would be called a what? Idol. It would be called an idol. What are your worries? What worries you? What makes you feel better? What's your sanctuary? What's the thing you run to when you're stressed? Is it food? Is it alcohol? Is it pornography? Is it other people, the approval of other people? Is it goal achievement, success? Is it Facebook? Is it video games? Where do you go to get comfort? I have people tell me all the time they don't have time to pray. What ticks you off? Does disrespect tick you off? Does it make you angry? What are your dreams? Those are just things those are just questions, and I came up with these after I'd printed up your notes. So if you want me to, I tell you what, if you want me to send you a list of these questions, write down on the bottom of your Connect card, send me questions, okay? Send me questions, and I will send you a list of those questions. Look at Ephesians 4, 13 and 14. Ephesians 4, 13 and 14. This is the Apostle Paul is just in this letter to the church of Ephesus. He's saying that, look, it's the job of the church to disciple the people. It's the job of the church to equip you to do the work of God. That's my job as a pastor. That's an evangelist job. That's our job. That's the job of the church. That's the job of us for each other. He says, and this equipping and this discipling will continue until we all come to such unity in our faith and knowledge of God's Son, that we will be what? Mature in the Lord. Are you getting it? However much time you spend disciplining yourself to know God better and to know God's will, then that's the thing that's going to help you mature in the Lord. Mature in the Lord. So that you will measure up to the full and complete what? Yeah. That's impossible this side of heaven, to reach it, but you're never supposed to stop trying to attain it. Let me say that again. Sanctification, perfection, being just like Jesus is not attainable while you're on this earth, but the goal is you're supposed to keep working on getting there. You're not supposed to go, oh, I'll never be Jesus. I'm just going to live my life the way I want to, and then one day I'll die and I'm going to go be like Jesus. That's not supposed to be your goal. You're never going to mature in the Lord if you have that kind of an attitude. 14, then, he's giving you a benefit. We will no longer be immature like what? Children. There are things you do with your kids, disciplines that you have with your kids that are oftentimes painful. Would you agree? It is so hard to see your kid hurting. It's so hard to see your kid upset. It's so hard to sometimes see your kid upset because you're making them do something or not do something that all their friends are getting to do. Then you will no longer be immature like children. We won't be tossed around and blown about by every wind of new teaching or idle. See, remember, the closest we get to God, the more we get more like Jesus, the more we're thinking of God's will, the more it becomes more obvious what's right and what's wrong. You know, I have people tell me I'm confused all the time, and my answer for that is get closer to God. It will clear up the confusion. We will not be influenced when people try to trick us with lies so clever they sound like the truth. God says all the time, you choose me or whatever. You choose me or money, you choose me or career, you choose me in that relationship, you choose me in that house, you choose anything. But He wants you to choose Him. So number one is what? Okay, now I'm going to give you, I believe biblically, what the last three are. And I'm not putting you in there. Where do you think you should come? It should come last. Remember, that's a good Christian answer, but that's not always the case, right? So I'm going to give you these, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on each one because they're all could be easily whole series and individual messages. But here's what I want you to understand. If God is the God, not just number one, not just high up on your hierarchy, not just, that's my default. If God is your God, then what's going to happen is these other ones will fall into place like they're supposed to. Because you're going to learn and they will fall into place. So what's number two? Spouse. Number two is your spouse. We all say that, I think, when marriage is going okay, but we don't all live that. And again, you can look at your life and you can see where your spouse falls in. Our goal, here's our goal. I don't know if you've ever thought of it this way, but here's the goal I've came up with for your spouse. You ready? Your goal with your spouse should be to honor God and encourage your spouse. Here's that S word that nobody likes. And you are allowed to say in church, through submission. Have you ever thought about that? Your goal as a Christian, your who's following God, who's following Jesus Christ, who's learning to be more like Jesus, your goal is to encourage your spouse. Your spouse should be better because he or she is married to you. That's your goal. And I'm about to show you a couple of passages that will show that a little bit more. Your goal is to make your spouse better. How important is your spouse? The Apostle Paul said, look, I've chosen not to get married because you know why? If I got married, I would have to focus so much more on my wife that I wouldn't be able to do a lot of the things that I'm doing for God right now. Do you know how many pastors I've met whose kids are depressed or anxious or angry or whatever because they never get any attention from their dad, the pastor? and in their mind he's out there ministering to everybody else and doesn't have anything to do with them? You know how many pastors' wives I've counseled that are leaving their husbands, and when you talk to them, they're going... The funny thing is, when I first became a counselor, I kind of had a fear of being around pastors at that time in my life. And some of the first clients God sent me to counsel were pastors and their wives. And the thing that happened over and over and over again is the wife would say, my husband puts his ministry, not God. She knows God's supposed to be first. My husband puts his ministry first. And me and the kids fall in somewhere along behind. He's out there ministering to everyone else all the time, and he doesn't take care of business at home. To honor God and encourage your spouse through submission. Ephesians 5:21 says, submit to one another out of what? Reverence for God. Nobody likes the submission. That nobody likes that. And when I used to teach Bible study classes or whatever, there's basically 3 different passages in the New Testament where God says, submit to your spouse, submit to your spouse, submit to your spouse. And it's right on. And you know, when husbands are mad at their wives, when Christian husbands are mad at their wives, one of the worst things you can possibly say is, woman, you're supposed to submit. Because if you say that, you're not doing what you've been told to do, which is submit so much. It's the Bible says the way Jesus Christ died for your church, for his church, his wife. It's about submission. You put your spouse above yourself. That's really what it's all about. And like I said, we can go into this is a whole series of sermons, but we're supposed to submit to our spouses. You know, and what the world will say is get a divorce, demand your rights, argue, and make him pay. That never works. It never works. Ever works. We're supposed to be submissive or unselfish. We're supposed to, ladies, you're supposed to help your husband be the best that he can possibly be. You're supposed to focus on honoring God instead of worried about what you're getting or not all the time. You're supposed to stay beautiful. And you know, that doesn't mean just physically. I mean, I was teaching a class one time, and I was teaching on search for significance, and I was and a lady brought up her husband that had had an affair or something like that, and I said something about the wife's supposed to stay beautiful on the inside and take care of herself physically and stay as beautiful as she can on the outside. Remember, because the husband, the eyesight, what he sees is very, very important, and this lady who you could tell hadn't been paying attention to that part very much, stands up and just pointed at me and yelled across the room, my husband should love me unconditionally no matter what. And I said, if you love your husband unconditionally, you would be taking care of yourself. Not very politically correct, but it's true. Husbands, you need to be taking care of yourself physically. Men die before women. And you know why most of us die? Because we get this thing around the middle. They call it pot belly. They call it whatever you want to call it. That's one of the first signs that you can have heart problems that they've discovered now. You can be healthy everywhere else, but if you've got this thing going around the middle of you, there's a whole lot better chance you're going to die before your wife. You're going to die before your kids even grow up. And then, ladies, taking care of yourself on the inside. You know, Jesus jumped on the Pharisees for working really hard on how they looked on the outside and not fixing the inside. Let me tell you something. There's something about wouldn't you agree? Isn't there just, when you get around people that just seem to be beautiful on the inside, they just glow. And it doesn't matter. All the other stuff doesn't matter so much, what they look like on the outside, what they look like physically. When you get to know someone and you see how beautiful they are on the inside, it glows. Husbands, I don't think did I put 1 Peter 3:7? I think I added this. Is it on your notes? No, it's not. But I did put 1 Peter. Yeah, and actually that's 3:1 and 2. I think when I put that, I put 1 and 2 means 3. No, it doesn't. It's 1 Peter 3:1 and 2. 1 Peter 3:1 and 2 says, then, and this is following up the passage in 1 Peter where it's telling the wife to submit. Okay, you ready for this? Then, if some refuse to obey the good news, in other words, the Word of God, the gospel, then your godly lives will speak to them without any words. They will be won over by observing your what? Pure and reverent lives. Remember, God, ladies and men, honoring God is what's first. God's saying, look, you can be a witness. And this is powerful because he says this to the women. And he's writing this to women that my niece and nephew just went to Africa, and they're living around Muslims, and we just got their first email, and I mean they're living in a house with no running water, no electricity. They're wearing all the clothes that the Muslims wear. Jake and Mandy cannot be seen in public together. They can't go to church together. He can't go help. She's supposed to do anything domestically that's work-wise, marketing. He can't even go with her to the market. Women are second-class citizens there. So this is a culture, when Peter's writing this, that the women are second-class citizens. So this makes this verse even that much more powerful. These are women who aren't even recognized, except they're supposed to be for domestic support. And I'm not talking about Christian-wise, because Paul and Peter and them, they all take care of us understanding how we're supposed to take care of our wives. But according to their culture back then, and he's saying, look, ladies, even though you may be treated like garbage, if you will live your life reverently and honoring God, you will change your husband. You will change your husband. And I'm telling you, it works both ways. It works both ways. Men, submission, you will never, ever, ever have to say, woman, you're supposed to submit to me. If you're submitting and loving her and taking care of your wife, she's going to think you're the greatest thing that ever walked on the face of the earth. Because that's how we've been created for each other. See, our job as husband and wife is my wife needs to feel best because she's married to me. And I need to feel best about myself because I'm married to her. And the only way that happens is that we focus on God so that we're not depending on our wife to be what we need us to be, but we can give our wife what we need from them because we're focusing on God. Does that make sense? I'm throwing a whole lot at you here. And those are whole different sermons, and we'll do something on those. But all right, and then what do you think's number 3? Kids are number 3. Now let me talk about this for just a second, and we'll go on. First of all, we have a goal for our kids. Our goal is to, y'all want to say this with me? To honor God and raise our kids to be successful adults and love God. That's your whole goal. That's your whole goal. To honor God and raise our kids to be successful adults and love God. We should be loving our kids and taking care of our kids as if they're not our own, that they're God's kids. And remember, who's supposed to go first, husbands and wives? Are your kids supposed to be next in line, or are your spouse supposed to be next in line? We need to remember that. Here's what I see happen with couples a lot. They have a baby. The baby becomes the center of the mother's life. So much that she wants the kids sleeping with them in their bed. So much that she's focused on the kid and what the kid's doing all the time. And what ends up happening is the husband decides, okay, the wife thing isn't working anymore. I'm going to make my job number 1 now. And that's going to meet the needs that I'm not getting from my wife. The best thing you can do for your kids to help them grow up to be healthy adults is to see y'all to be a healthy couple. That's the absolute best thing. And they need to know they don't run your family. They need to know that they're not the ones in charge. Just very, again, this is a whole sermon, but what we have to realize is our kids are important, and we're supposed to raise them, and we're supposed to teach them to become Christians. We're supposed to raise them as if they're God's child. We're supposed to teach them how to have relationships. We're supposed to teach them about character and values, and teach them how to have confidence and fun and consequences. They're supposed to be above our job, but they're not supposed to be above our spouse. Ephesians 6:4 says, "Fathers, don't provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. Rather, bring them up with discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord." This doesn't talk necessarily about the discipline of punishing them because they do something wrong. We're supposed to teach them the disciplines of the faith. They're supposed to see us pray and honor God and all with our lives and treat our spouses right. And then I love this verse, Deuteronomy 6 and 9. I'm running out of time here. "You must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I'm giving you today. Repeat them again and again to" what? To your children. How many times do y'all sit down and have spiritual conversations with your kids? I mean, it needs to be, your kids need to grow up going, I'm going to be talking to my mom and dad about God a lot. And they may not always like it, but they'll like it better if they see that God has a positive influence on your life. Let me tell you something. If God doesn't have a positive influence on your life, if you don't allow that to happen, if you're not really following God, and you're trying to tell your kids how to follow God, good luck. They're going to hate church. They're going to hate God. Because they're going to see that it doesn't make any difference in their parents' lives. Talk to them when you're at home, when you're on the road, when you're going to bed, when you're getting up. Tie them to your hands, not the kids, the commands, and wear them on your forehead as reminders. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And then number 4 is what? Job. Now here's where we get confused. We believe, and a lot of it has to do with our background. I remember my dad telling me that he just thought being a good father meant, and my dad was a sharecropper. They moved around from place to place. They were dirt poor his whole kid life. And he thought all he was supposed to be as a dad, to be a good dad, is to make sure we had a roof over our head and food. And he wanted us to have some nice things. And he worked 80 hours a week. When you make decisions about your job, you need to think about your spouse and your kids. I've counseled lots of adults that were messed up because their parents moved to a different town every year. That's a major decision that has to be made. And we made some decisions in our life where I didn't take promotions and I didn't move because we were at a certain point in our life where we thought it would be tough on our kids. But those are decisions that you have to make. And you've got to realize, and the goal for your job is to honor God as your Lord and as your employer. The goal of your job is to honor the Lord as your employer, God as your Lord and as your employer. And then I put the Colossians 3:22. I just promise you, if you're having trouble with your boss, if you'll change the attitude that you have with your boss, it could change everything. It could change your boss liking you better. It could change you being able to forgive him. It could make it to where you like your job better. And look what it says in Colossians 3. It says, "Slaves, obey your earthly masters in everything you do. Try to please them all the time, not just when they're watching you. Serve them sincerely because of your reverent fear of the Lord. Work willingly at whatever you do as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people." Whew. Some of that's hard stuff to listen to, isn't it? But I know this. I've seen it in my life. I've seen it in some of yours lives that I know. And I've seen it in people that I counsel. If you will live according to these priorities, your marriage will be better than it ever has been. And husbands, as that passage says in 1 Peter, your prayers will be answered. You'll have a good marriage and your prayers will be answered.